podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Coach Unplugged is brought to you by great people over at teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. From the Fifth Quarter Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, you're listening to Coach Unplugged. Here is your host, Steve Collins.
6 of Coach Unplugged. Before we get started, I want to give a big shout out to thank our sponsor for this month, Dr. Dish. They have sponsored this entire month. If you're in the market for a shooting machine, make sure you go over and check them out. I do not think you'll be disappointed. They're innovative, they're versatile, they're for the technology-based kid, the technology-based coach. They are what you should be looking for if you're looking to improve your shooting percentages. So go over and check them out. Make sure you also go over and subscribe and like. We really do appreciate that. I know it takes about 30 seconds, but it does help us keep these podcasts coming to all of you. And the last thing is make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com. Basketball season is right around the corner. For some of you, it's next month. For others, it might be 6 weeks away, but go over and check it out. 14-day free trial, audio, video, you name it, practice plans, one-on-one calls. It is the Netflix for basketball coaches, but Netflix doesn't have one-on-one calls. Netflix doesn't have office hours. Netflix doesn't have the community that we have over at teachhoops.com. So go over and check them out. This week, we're going to talk about the start of the year, getting rid of some of the clutter, those kind of things. So I hope you're enjoying these high school hoops. Let us know if you are. All right, off to the podcast. All right. I'm a math teacher. I think we're on episode 4, Coach. All right,
I'll write that down so we can be pretty.
All right, so let's dive right into this. What is this week's topic? Because this week's topic is stressing me. I'm sweating as we speak. Right?
It makes me extremely nervous because everything is great till about September, and you got August and July and June, and you're watching your players shoot the ball, and they're in and out of the gym, and you're just watching them play. You're coaching and doing all these great things, and then suddenly school starts and you don't see them as much, and you don't see what's going on with your program, and where do you start to begin? And the season is only a couple months away, and how do you putting it all together? So my question today is going to be a 2-part question, and I'm going to talk about this other concept in a second. My first quick question is, how do we start the school year as a high school coach? How do you approach the start of the school year? And the other thing is this idea of clutter. And then I'll talk about clutter in a little bit. Do you think that we should start just talking about how we approach the beginning of the school year first?
Let's talk,
and then we can kind of talk about this idea of clutter later.
Yeah, let's do the beginning of the school year first. So,
all right, sounds good.
So
Coach.
I 5 years ago I was dumb enough to take a fall coaching job. So now I go fall right into winter. So obviously my stress level goes up, but especially for the high school coaches, even if you're not a teacher, it's a stressful time, at least in our house. You know, you're doing all this. Unless
you're single and you have a really good job that gives you flexibility, then life is great.
Right. And you haven't reached getting ready for school, buying the backpacks, all this kind of stuff, meeting the teachers, all that kind of stuff. So you haven't hit that yet. Wait till you hit that. So
my daughter's in kindergarten this year, Coach. So I'm starting to freak out a little bit. So you got
the I have to bring 18 glue sticks to school kind of thing.
Yeah, and I got to label everything now and all this other stuff. Oh my goodness.
Here's for the high school coaches. Here's the issue is you have to, and this is the issue I have, and I've been doing this for 30 years. So I got to worry about my fall sport team, which is probably not most of you. But I have to worry about getting my own kids to school and getting them ready for their experience this year. I have to worry about sitting through all these meetings I'm going to have to sit through for the next 2 weeks, which is a plus in some respects because I'll get some work done because I'm old and I don't listen anymore. And then I got to start thinking lesson plans. I got to think about grading. I got to think about getting, all the stuff that just. What people don't understand about teaching is when I walk in that building the first day, I'm not off until I leave the building. Like I'm being asked questions. There's no like sitting down and having 10 minutes for myself thing. So all this thought process and all the stuff that has happened in the off season, poof, goes away because now I'm worried literally about putting one foot in front of the other. So this is what I wanted to talk about is the beginning of the school year. How do you get ready for, the end of October, the beginning of November, whenever your season starts? How do you get rid of all those stresses to do it? And here's how I do it. And I haven't done the exercise part, but what I've started to do is I've started to actually schedule basketball time in my Google Calendar. And it's like I come into my office, I shut the door, and I'm going to just think about basketball for an hour. I'm going to do these things, and no, don't bother me. Don't bother me at this point. And a lot of time, for my kids are older, a lot of time they're in bed by the time I'm doing this. But I'm literally scheduling it to get it done. And it has helped. And my goal, I'm going to throw it out to the world. My goal is to do this with exercise too, because I'm good about walking the dog, but I'm not as good about getting my heart up and I want to lose about 15 pounds. So I'm going to start scheduling my exercise too. I'm going to put it in the Google Calendar. I'm going to hold myself accountable, that kind of stuff. So that's something I do as far as trying to get rid of the stresses of the beginning of the year. Because the next thing you do is, like you said, Coach, you look up and it's freaking the end of October and the season's 2 weeks away.
I think too is that if you're a first year coach, you're never going to know all the stressors till you go through it.
No.
And I think it's just really important right now in September to think about and reflect about the things that are constantly getting in the way. And as I continue to coach high school basketball, I constantly made a list of things that overstressed me. And I started to try to get those done in September and October, even in summertime. And
Right.
I know that it's kind of late now in the year, but this idea, could I be able to do a lot of this stuff before the season even hits?
Yeah.
Because, is it I like to, as a head coach, I like to be involved with youth sport stuff. Can I get a lot of youth stuff done before the school year the season starts? Can I be able to, another one's practice schedule. And a lot of you guys, a lot of high school coaches come in a small community where you got to collaborate with the girls coaches and the other coaches about setting your schedule. What does that look like?
Yep.
Scouting schedule. I mean, those are just different things that,
and this is where you can delegate. Yes, you can delegate some of this too. Like, so Nate, if you're listening to this, I'm hoping you're doing the scouting schedule. But I have an assistant coach, and he's got a baby due at the beginning of the year. So it's like, do the scouting schedule if you're listening to this, Nate. But anyway, I delegate. I already did my buses. The buses are done. Officials are done. Some of that stuff is. So I think that's a really good thing. I do that in the summer. I get that off my.
Yeah.
I'm
like
juggling
the big games. Like if you're gonna have I've done we had a girl several years ago pass away from cancer, so we used to do a childhood cancer awareness game.
Right.
That takes a lot of time. I really want to do it. It's meaningful to our community, and I want to do it right. But if I'm starting to do planning during the course of the season, it's just way too much. I even start to delegate, ideas of, when is my parents' night going to be? When am I going to order flowers? All that stuff. Because you know what? When it's 9:00 at night and you just got off a really a close game, or you just got done with the game, and then 2 days later you got parents' night, you're not ready for that. You've got. I think the key thing you talked about too is this idea to delegate and utilizing that. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned as a coach at a high school level is learning to think about things. What are the things I can get done before the season even starts? And build off of that.
Right.
And then if you're a new coach, I think that's where you go out and you ask questions and you develop a mentor, whether you join teachhoops.com and you ask Coach Collins, what are the things I need to get done?
I'll respond to you. I will respond very quickly.
Very quickly, because he will. And it's really helpful because, man, your first year as a high school coach, especially a varsity coach, it's the hardest year.
It is. It is. And here's what I've started to do too, is after a game, I come home. I usually get something to eat on the way home. Now I'm feeding my teenage son, I'll do that. And then I won't do any basketball that night. I won't. I'll watch TV. I'll watch Netflix. I'll go on a walk. I'll do something. I almost need to come back down and have some me time at that point. So I've always, and that's something I've started to do in the last 4 or 5 years, and that's really helped, because I used to come home and then I'd start thinking about the next opponent, and either way, it's just like I need to desensitize. I need to I'm gonna watch Netflix, because I don't get to watch Netflix. I'm gonna find something on Netflix that I want to watch, or I'm gonna do. I think that's really important to schedule something like that. And I was listening to a podcast on Sirius Radio by Wharton Business School, and they were talking about people having second jobs. And basketball is coaching is a second job,
Yes.
They said it's a second job, and they were talking about how teachers do it and other jobs do it, and people bartend and all that kind of stuff. But anyway,
Yep.
and the takeaway I took from this and what they were talking about was that people are able to do it and they're very satisfied with it, but they lose something with family, they lose something with themselves, they lose something with that by taking that second job. So with the coaches, especially, all this stuff that you can take off your plate makes the family life better, makes the relaxing for you better, the exercise better, all of those things better. And that's what the study, I think it was a professor from Ball State that did it. But I think that's really important to be able to balance that. And it's hard. Some teachers
It's going to take time.
It's going to take
time to balance that too, because you got to develop really good assistants. You got to develop your core group of coaches, and like starting out when you're built. A lot of people, when they get a head coaching job, you're building it from the ground up. Unless you put in your time, and that's about. You got to know what you can and can't. What you can do as a person.
Yep.
Like I would talk about with my situation. I took a head coaching job at age 26. My wife and I were expecting. My first year coaching, we bought a house. My first year coaching varsity basketball, we bought a house. My wife was pregnant, and it was my first year teaching in a new district. Oh my God, overload. Okay,
overload. So
it's just too much.
You did the polar opposite of me. I got my head job October. We were married in August, and I got it in. Hey everybody, I hope you're enjoying high school hoops. If you are, just shoot us an email at steve@teachhoops.com. We would love to hear if you're liking these or any topics that you would think that you would want for upcoming months. Also, make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com, 14-day free trial. There's not a better time to become a better basketball coach than when the season is right around the corner. So go over and check that out and subscribe and like. We would really appreciate that. Thanks. October. It's like, so she's only known me as a head coach. Like, we've only lived together as a head coach. Like, my timing was perfect.
Perfect. But I always told true story. I always told my wife when we were dating that I wanted to be a coach and she'd have to be flexible for it. But, a coach's wife is a blessing in itself. I mean, you could do a whole podcast. You got to have a special woman that's a whole different podcast in itself.
That's a spring one. Let's do that after the season. Because I think
sounds great because We'll do it as a Mother's Day special for sure.
That would be good. Yes. We both appreciate it more too, because we'll have some stories. That would be good. Well, all right, we'll put that. If we forget that, people remind us. All right, let's get into the other part, Coach.
All right, sounds good. So where I'm coming with this whole idea of clutter is I'm a constant learner from other coaches. And I had the opportunity a couple of years ago when Green Bay was doing really well. They had Coach Wardle. They had a really good program. And he had a clinic there, and he brought other coaches. And I got a chance to listen to a guy named Scott Trost. Scott Trost is the head basketball coach at Lewis University. And a lot of times you pick up different X's and O's, but he talked about this thing that for me, when I was building or trying to build a program from the ground up, that I had a lot of, and this idea of what we call clutter. And the next question is, and I'll define clutter, is how and why is it important to eliminate negativity in your team and your program? And I asked Coach Trost to explain it better so our listeners could understand it. Yep. And he looks forward for you guys to hear his remark. He says, I think getting rid of clutter in your program, behaving in a way that is above the line, is the foundation for success in anything that you do. Clutter is anything that impacts your program in a negative way. It can be on the court and it can be off the court. I think team dynamics and team chemistry is such more important than X's and O's. The best advice I can give someone is to be open and transparent with your team. And so he said one thing that he's doing with his team this year is having weekly discussions with them on certain issues that impact the team both negatively and positively before the season starts. Because I will tell you, as the school year starts and being a high school coach, that you have a lot of clutter that can happen in regards to decision making of young women and young men. Whether it's are they going to do anything to break the athletic code violation? What kind of character decisions are they making? Are they meeting the expectations academically? Are they getting along with their teammates? How are the relationships going with them? How are their relationships with there's so much encompasses as a high school basketball coach that people don't understand, and how much you have to really mentor and be here for your kids, because it really goes beyond because those real other things that we'll talk about now, this idea of clutter that get in the way of the true potential of your team and your players. I mean, how do you try to eliminate that? It's very hard.
It's very
And it's something that really impacts your program. It really does. And, if a kid gets in trouble for doing a code violation, he's out the first 6 games.
right.
That makes a huge damper, and it creates that clutter, that negativity in your program. How do you eliminate those things? Can you be able to eliminate all of them? I don't think so. You can't. You're not an all-knowing. You're not a god. You can't see everything.
Right.
But I do think there are things that you can do to help that.
Well, I think what I think you can do is acknowledge it. I think you can, be honest with them. This goes back to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. This, about being authentic, all that kind of stuff. You have to face it. If you don't face it, it's going to come back and bite you, in my opinion.
Right.
It also comes back to picking your team. Like it goes back to episode 1 of,
Right.
What kind of players do you have? What do you do? Because, a bad apple can spoil the whole bushel, kind of thing.
Right.
And if not, that's where if you deal with it and you attack it, it makes it a lot easier, I think.
And I'll tell you though, sometimes it's not worth keeping that bad apple as good as players as they are. I think a lot of coaches have made this mistake where, man, he's she's a really good basketball player, and then something happens in regards to a clutter situation where the negativity hits the peak and they're not even on the team anymore, and suddenly things change and the team is better without that person. It happens. So sometimes it's better to eliminate that negativity early on in the season or before the season even occurs, because you do know what your kids are doing. If you really are truly doing your job, what kind of kids, what kind of things that they're doing. And, if it's going to be a problem for your program, I think you got to really, you got to communicate that and not be afraid to talk about it.
No, it's better to have 1 bad or 2 bad days at the beginning of the season and deal with the problem than to deal with it later in the year, because it's going to fester too. So I agree. I think clutter and this goes back to what I was talking about at the beginning, is like, I feel clutter at the beginning of the school year. I feel all these things. So you got to come up with systems to deal with the clutter. You have to deal with within your team, within your program, within your staff, within your thing. You almost got to think like a football coach. I don't know how the football coaches do it.
I did middle school football one year because I really liked the coach, and a lot of kids in my school was playing basketball. Kids are playing football, so I decided to do junior. I mean, football is that's a whole nother nature, man. I gave football coaches out there. I mean, there's so much strategy and more players, and it's just it's a very complex game.
It's a very complex game, and the issue is that the systems they must have. I am literally like, so my volleyball team will be 10 to 12. My basketball team will be 12 to 15. That's it for me. That's it. One person and an assistant. I'm thinking. I did the video board for our football game, and I'm looking over, and there's 6 Sun Prairie coaches. There's 4 Memorial coaches, and that's guys in the box with me. And then you look down on the sideline, and there's 70 kids on the sideline, and then there's coaches on the sideline. It's like, how do you deal with all those systems? Yes, maybe you and I have to do some more reading on football coaches, because I think
I don't know, because I think you talk about a lot of these idea systems. So I think as we get going, as this whole high school hoops podcast continues within Coach Unplugged, I think we can talk about how to eliminate some of those clutters. So how your parent meeting, your coaching expectations for your players, your consequences. What are you doing to build relationships with your players? Because all those things, if those systems aren't in place, those become clutter.
Right.
And so I think you hit it on the head, is that you have to have systems in place. And I think another thing you've talked about is it's always better to over communicate. Always better to over communicate everything that you do.
It is.
You may sound redundant, but if you over communicate and emphasize things more often, that they're more likely they're going to hear it. Or they can't go back that negativity and say, you didn't hear what I said. I told you couldn't do that. Or
Yep. And the thing is, we live in a world where it's easier to communicate. Now, I'm not saying you're getting on the phone and calling every parent, but there's so many different ways to communicate with parents and communicate with There's no excuse anymore. There's really no excuse for not communicating, like sending a weekly email or sending this or that.
And I get frustrated with kids too, is that how do they not know what they're doing in school, or how they're doing. I mean, they can, most schools, and I'm pretty sure, and all the other coaches, that they can get their grades instantaneously on some type of online grade book. I do all my grades online. You do all your grades online. People are supposed to, and most districts, all districts really want us to upkeep those as educators so people can understand how they're doing.
Right.
So there's no excuse,
No.
But I think, but if I don't know, if we don't emphasize it, if we don't tell them about it, and we constantly communicate that those things are important, or they're going to get in the way, and there's just so other things that people don't understand that get in the way. High school kids, they get into relationships and they think they're in love, and then their focus point is on their boyfriend and girlfriend. They think the world is going to end, and they play a really crummy game for the next 2 days.
Right.
Or at some point, in high school, a lot of people lose their first grandparent.
Right.
And how do you deal with that clutter? Because it's all things. As a high school coach, you don't learn in a class. You have to be prepared for that. You have to be, again, it goes back to this podcast a couple of times ago, this idea of being authentic is that, clutter is going to happen, and how do you eliminate that negativity within your program?
Right. And I think that's really important. I think we just came up with like 7 different podcasts too.
Right, exactly.
I think you're right.
Right.
All right. Anything else, Coach?
No, again, like if other people have ideas or issues of clutter that get in their way, I think that's one of the things that our intention of this. Because if we know the things that people are having clutter or having that issue within their program, then we can build upon a podcast that we can generate for you and other coaches, because they're going to have the same problems.
So there's 2 ways. Two ways you can put it in the show notes, but probably even the better way, if you have some systems, you have some stuff you want to talk about, blah, blah, blah. Steve at teachhoops.com. So teachhoops.com, Steve at teachhoops.com. Really easy to remember. Send me an email and we'll definitely put it on the docket for future podcasts.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right. Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. The end of September. The leaves are going to start falling. I hope you're enjoying these high school hoops on Friday, leading into the weekend.